sex with her surrogate dude, bro. The guy did. He got it on. It was incredible. Sorry. How often? Oh, no. Okay, we're getting a good question here. Hi, John. Wow, hello. How you doing tonight? How often do I reflect on childhood relationship with my parents? At the shrink. Yeah. So, I would say that a lot of our past sessions were about that. As far as like going now, like currently, I would say not very much, because a lot of the things that I discuss are like modern day, current issues that are going on. But whenever I was first going, several times it would be about that. And I had a really weird childhood because I was never abused in any way, which makes it all the weirder, because I feel like I had to have been, Like, I feel like surely someone must have beat me or sexually abused me, or, some kind of abuse must have happened. But honestly, it didn't. Fuck you, dude. Motherfucking lost that. However, I was the only child. I lived with my grandparents. My grandparents were wealthy at the time. They had just sold their business for a lot of money. And they taught me to read and write by a very, very young age. I would say probably around like 3.5 years old. Knew how to read, knew how to write. However, they never saw fit to put me in a preschool. And I think that from their perspective, they were like, oh, well, she already knows, more than what they would teach her in preschool, so we don't need to put her in there. But my social interaction was seriously lacking. So I remember being 4 and 5 years old, and my social circle was literally a group of cats. A group of literal cats that we had at my grandparents' house. And we had a bunch of word processors and computers at that time, because like I said, they were pretty wealthy. And I would, I would type up worksheets for the cats to do. And this one cat I would always put in a bonnet, and I would push him around, like, 3 to 4 year old me, I would push him around. Also, I had a serious preoccupation with the Bible story Cain and Abel. With just the Cain and Abel Bible story. My family wasn't religious. We didn't have any religious influence at all. But my grandparents would like sit down and they would make me read to them. I was very young, like before kindergarten age, and they would make me read to them just to see that I could. And the first story that I think I ever read, or the only one that I remember reading, was a Cain and Abel story. And, someone dies horribly in that story, and I loved it for some reason. I was like a sick freak. So I wanted to read that story every night, again and again. And I feel like my grandparents, they kept this secret from pretty much everyone ever. So going into kindergarten was a rough year. Because kindergarten, at least in Arkansas, the area I was in, it was a year where like the teachers decided, oh, you could stand to go up a couple of levels, or you might need to be held back a little bit. And they thought that I would be fine. Like, yeah, you know your alphabet, you know how to read, blah blah blah. You can go on a couple of levels. And I suddenly became very embarrassed about it. I don't know why. It doesn't make sense, but I suddenly became very embarrassed about it. Oh, fuck you! So all of my friends, I felt like were staying on one level, and I felt really weird. I felt such a social anxiety about moving to a different level and not knowing people. So I would never ever do it. And for the next 2 or 3 years, all the way up to like first grade, I would read Cain and Abel, the Bible story, Cain and Abel, obsessively. About that time, about the age of 5, I became obsessed with horror movies, horror film, and I'm talking like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I loved it, and I wanted to see it. And I remember a time, I may have been in like 2nd grade or something like that, and I was screaming to watch watch a really scary movie. I wanted to watch a really scary movie, and my grandma had the audacity to put on the X-Files. And as a child, like a second grader, oh no! I'm so drunk, you guys. As a child, I knew that the X-Files was not scary. So I threw an all-out fit, and it's one of the times where, like, you do something that's so nuts and it stands out in your mind, you know, like, so I threw a fucking fit because my grandma tried to put the X-Files on, and it just, like, lives on in my memory because, I remember it, other people, like my grandparents, my mom, they've told me about this, and at that time, I wanted to watch a horror movie about like, creatures being held in an attic. I don't even know. I would get very obsessed with certain horror movies. And I remember one time, now this time I was probably in about 4th grade. I was going to stay the night with a friend, and my friend's mom had taken us to the movie store. And this was like VHS times, you know. So we went to the movie store, and she said that we could, like, each pick out a movie that we wanted to watch. So we were over there and we were looking, and it was like, you know, the winter months or something, and she saw some Jack Frost, her mom did. She saw some Jack Frost version, some movie, and she was like, oh, we could watch this. And right next to the Jack Frost, there was some Jack Frost horror movie. I don't know what it was, but basically one of the ones with, like, Jack Frost with blood all over him. Like, Jack Frost murders everyone. And I thought that she was talking about that one because at this point in my life, all I wanted to do was watch horror. I wanted gore, and I wanted a lot of it. And so she pointed it out, and I was like, no, wait, you grabbed the wrong one. So I picked up the actual movie, the actual, like, VHS that I thought it was going to be, like the horror one. And she was so shocked that she called my mom and had a discussion with my mom. And I remember my mom talking to me and saying, like, hey, I know you like these movies, but not everyone likes this, okay? So, like, it's not okay. And so I was, like, shocked. I was just blown away. And ever since then, I kind of kept to myself after that. So, reading isn't required until 4th grade in Arkansas. Actually, I think that you learn to read, like, I think it's like 2nd grade. I don't know if that's completely right, but I feel like it's 2nd grade. And the only reason I learned was because, you know, I was the only grandchild. And my grandparents, they had me, I was the only grandchild, and they taught me how to do it. And I'm not saying, like, oh, I was a super genius or anything like that. Like, I just had one-on-one 100% attention from these people. So I knew how to do it. I knew how to read. And in their mind, they thought, you know, we don't need to send her to preschool because, fuck you, motherfucker. Dude, that was my last line. Can I turn down the music just a tad? Yes, I absolutely will. Let's see how this is. Let me know how that is. Let me know if that works better for you guys. What was I telling you guys? Something. But yeah, basically, my grandparents never sent me to school, or I had to go to school obviously, but they never sent me to preschool. So I felt like going into kindergarten, I was really left out. All the other children had learned skills of socializing. So regardless of how good I was at reading, writing, and arithmetic, I had not learned the skills of socialization, which I feel like is a big part of school. That's a big part of adapting to a public school environment. And I struggled a lot with it, and I hated every bit of it. Fuck you, motherfucker. We're gonna do better at this, you guys. Yeah. Which, to go back to your original point, isn't that something that I've spoken to my psychologist about? Absolutely. We have went in depth about all of these points time and time again. So, absolutely. We've been there, we've done that. I was the only child. I am an only child. My parents never had any other kids. So, dude, like, bye. You know, they just never did anything like that. So, there's a documentary of parents who intentionally make their children sick for addicted something. Yeah, that's Munchausen. Or, actually, Munchausen by proxy. It has a new name, actually. The syndrome has a new name. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but Munchausen by proxy isn't the correct term for it anymore. When I was still studying in college, like the university levels, Munchausen by proxy was still the name for it. But yeah, it's not that anymore. But I do know exactly what you're talking about. It was Munchausen by proxy is essentially what you're describing, where you make the child sick. People will go as far as injecting the children with diseases, flu virus, cold virus, literally their own shit, doing anything to make the child sick. So yeah. Why did I live with my grandparents? With my mom? Yeah. So about that, my mom did have me. My mom had me when she was 6. Not 6. I stopped that sentence in a really weird place. Really weird. My mom had me when she was 16 years old, which is super young. But aside from that, there was, and I don't feel like ashamed to say it, but there was a period of time. My mom is an entirely different person now, so it doesn't make me feel weird to say it, but there was a period of time where my mom was addicted to methamphetamine. And she literally left me with my grandparents and basically said, raise this child because I would rather do methamphetamine than raise this child. So my grandparents, kind of were like, all right, we'll raise this child. There wasn't a ton of other thought there. So my mom had, I'd say about a meth span. Fuck you, dude, I didn't hit it in time. I'd say my mom was addicted to meth for about 9 months, a little less than a year. After that, she had got me back. Her and my father they were both addicted to meth. They were both super young. They had got me back and I went back and forth. So I would live with them and it was a complete dichotomy because my parents, my actual parents, my mother and my father were incredibly poor. We lived in a very, very, sketchy part of town. I never felt safe. We lived in a really, just a very, very unsafe home environment. And my grandparents, it was very different. They had a very nice home, very safe part of town, and it would be down to the level of like, oh, if I go to my grandparents' house, I can eat Dorito chips, but if I go to my mom's, I might not have anything to eat tonight. So we always had a lot of fights then. I was like maybe grade 2nd to 4th grade. And I would want to, obviously I'd want to live with my grandparents or I'd want to stay with my grandparents for that time. So it would be back and forth, really back and forth a lot. But my mom would be like, no, I'm going to keep her. I'm going to do, the best. It's a difficult thing, really, but it never bothered me too much. Yeah, that's my life. Are you guys my new psychologist right now? These are all things that I have. Fuck you! Fuck you, Mario! That was such a short jump. You could have done it. So the reason that I would talk about that, I don't feel weird about it. I really don't. I've talked about it before, other places, and it doesn't make me feel weird. I've been over this part, with my psychologist several times. That's just life. That was like literally my life. There's nothing weird about it. There's no way that I can cut it other than what it was. My grandparents, I felt like they were very high class. They were very sophisticated. They were very educated, and they had a lot of money. My parents, however, were 16 years old and addicted to methamphetamine. So how are you gonna dice it? They obviously, it was a kind of a strange life, a strange back and forth. But I appreciate my grandparents.